In my last video, I talked about all the cards that we're actually going to be losing in Standard because they're going to be rotating to Wild. Now in this video, I want to take a closer look at the cards that are actually going to be remaining from the 3 older sets that are going to stay on for another year in Hearthstone. There were previously some archetypes that did see play, and then as new cards were released, they were just no longer strong enough. But now, with 3 sets rotating out and only 1 more set coming in, some of those older cards with a little bit lower power level may actually be able to see play once again, and some of those old archetypes may get some new support to actually be able to come back. So we're going to take a look, beginning with the Voyage to the Sunken City set here. We can see that Lady Sitheno is still going to be around, Predation is still going to be around, and thinking a little bit ahead to farther in the video, what we're going to realize is that Spell Demon Hunter actually still has a lot of support. Sigil of Alacrity is rotating, as well as Fell Barrage, but if we're able to replace those spells, then Spell Demon Hunter with Soul Eater Scythe is still going to be a thing, so that's a direction that we could potentially look at. Keep in mind here as well that all of the Colossal minions are going to be around for another year in Hearthstone, so the classes that have good minions, like potentially Zalag here in Demon Hunter, are going to be able to play those cards as well. Not really an archetype, but it is just a solid card that can be played probably in a few different versions of their respective classes. Herald of Nature sticking around, that could potentially be a buff for any kind of board-based aggro deck for Druid. And moving right along here, we get to Hunter, and so Naga Hunter was kind of a thing. You know, we had the Raz, we had the Barb Net, the Ancient Kraken, and then we also had like the Twin Bow Terror Coil, Naga's Pride. So there was a Naga package that also tied in with like Hunter spells that saw play for a little while. I think in Face Hunter it fell off because more powerful cards were printed and just better stuff came out. But keeping in mind, Naga Hunter could be a thing going forward. We'd have to figure out what the deck looks like, but it's just something to keep in mind, Naga Spell Hunter. Getting into Mage, we can see Mage still has a lot of the Nagas that it received as well in Voyage to the Sunken City. Naga Mage definitely was a powerhouse for quite a bit of time. You can remember that Spike Lash Siren actually had to be nerfed, so Naga Mage could still be a thing. The problem with Naga Mage is that a lot of the Mage's cheap spells are going to be rotating. I think about cards like Wildfire, Flurry, Runed Orb, First Flame. Those cheap spells that really enabled the big pop-off turn with Spike Lash Siren are going to be rotating. If some new spells come in for Mage, cheap spells that will enable this combo, Naga Mage could be right back in action. Again, just because the power level in Hearthstone is going to be a little bit lower. Also of note here, Mech Mage, all of the mechs that are going to be in Mage are actually still going to be in Standard. So if you think about that original mech deck from about a year ago, we're going to be able to put that baby back together. All of these cards are still going to be in Standard, as well as the neutrals. And we've already seen, even though the entire set hasn't been revealed, Festival of Legends is going to include some mechs for additional support for Mech Mage. So, you know, as we're looking ahead and starting to theory craft, keep in mind that Mech Mage could be a thing. We're going to keep on rolling. We get to Paladin here, and same note for Paladin. Mech Paladin is still going to be a thing. A lot of the mechs that Paladin received as part of the Voyage of the Sunken City set, as well as the Radar Tector, the card draw for that deck, is all still going to be in the deck, and the neutrals there as well. So Mech Paladin, potentially a place that we might want to look. Priest, I really don't necessarily know what to do with Priest. I mean, they do still have the Colossal, but Priest has been hit really hard by the rotation. We're going to have to really see what we can put together there. No old archetypes jump out at me as I look through those. Pirate Rogue. Pirate Rogue was a thing for a while, especially in Voyage to the Sunken City. Not the most fun deck in the world, but it did win games. One thing to keep in mind about Pirate Rogue is it did receive some additional support in the most recent set with the 1-drop. Mr. Smite is going to be rotating. That's going to remove the burst from the deck and the minions being able to charge. But potentially Pirate Rogue might be a place that we would be able to look and potentially find an archetype that might be able to be revived. As we look forward, a lot of the Murloc Shaman stuff is rotating. Murloc Shaman likely going to be dead. You can always keep in mind that Glug is going to be there. Glug, absolutely great card. It's going to fit into a lot of different Shaman decks. Again, one of the better Colossal minions. Bioluminescence, we haven't really found a way to be able to use this, but potentially it could be a thing if there's a way to be able to get a wide board cheap enough and then be able to land that Bioluminescence and enough direct damage spells to be able to kill things. Burn Shaman was always a fun deck, could be able to make a comeback. We see here Murloc Shaman. The entire Murloc Shaman deck is actually still going to be in Standard, with the exception of 2 of the neutral Murlocs. So Lushwater Scout, which is the 1/3 that gave Murlocs Rush when they were summoned, and Lushwater Mercenary gained 1/1 if you had a Murloc on the board. Those 2 cards rotating, but the rest of Murloc Shaman is still going to be in the deck. And Murloc Shaman, you know, it was never great when compared to the power level of other decks in the meta, but it was good enough, and it's maybe received some additional support from the newer sets as well. that'll be something that we want to keep an eye on. As we get into Warrior here, not a whole lot of things really jumping out. And then the neutrals, again, you're going to see, the mechs that we were playing are still going to be around. Also, you're going to see things like the Vicious Slither Spear. Again, thinking about some of those Naga decks that we may have wanted to play. Murkwater Scribe, again, we're just seeing a lot of the support from some of these old archetypes. Mech Mage, Mech Paladin, all that stuff is still going to be here. So we're going to want to keep those in mind. Going over to Murder at Castle Nathria, you can see here Demon Hunter is still going to have the Relic package. So with the Relics, Relics, they're fun to play. They're very, very powerful. There's going to be some type of Relic Demon Hunter deck. We're just going to have to work out exactly what that's going to look like and what the other cards in the deck are going to be. And then you can see here again, Spell Demon Hunter is keeping a lot of its support. It's still going to be in the game as well. As far as Druid, Death Rattle Druid was never really a good deck, but maybe it gets some additional support. But Death Rattle Druid is a direction that we may want to look. There is some Death Rattle support for Druid that's still going to be in Standard. As we get over to Hunter, important to keep in mind that the Wild Seed package is still here. The Wild Seed package was especially strong for Hunter, so, could be some kind of a deck that's like a combination of the Naga package as well as the Wild Seed package. That might be a good place to start for, Face Hunter as the new set rolls around. Collateral Damage still going to be here too. Could potentially be used in something like a Face Hunter. Getting over to Mage here, Solid Alibi still sticking around. We don't really talk about that because I absolutely hate this card. I don't think it should exist. But keep in mind that Secret Mage, it was never really all that great, but most, if not all of the support for Secret Mage is still going to be in the game. I do believe Oasis Ally is going to rotate, but all of the rest of the secrets, Orion, the Mansion Manager, is going to be there. And then, we also see like a Contract Conjurer here, cost less for the secrets that are in play. So Secret Mage, again, a direction that we may want to look as we begin to Theory Craft. Getting into Paladin, Paladin still has a lot of pure Paladin support in the form of the Countess. Most recently, we've seen the Purator come along. So Pure Paladin, it's definitely losing Knight of Anointment. It's going to be losing Alliance Bannerman. It's going to be losing the Minion Cariel card. But there's still a lot of support here for Pure Paladin. So Pure Paladin should still be a really strong deck. We can probably replace those cards in some way. And then, again, that might just be the direction that we want to look for the first week of the Festival of Legends. Getting into Priest, we're going to see a lot of the Thief Priest cards are still going to be around as well. Thief Priest, maybe not necessarily especially powerful, but Thief Priest may be the way that we want to go with a version of Control Priest when we get to the new sets. We're going to want to keep things like that in mind. Getting over to Rogue here, Rogue still is going to have the secret support. Well, not so much this. It's a little bit of a misclick on my part. But you can see that the Rogue secret stuff is still going to be in the game, so potentially we can take a look at maybe Secret Rogue. We would need to be able to fill it in, of course, with other cards, but that package is going to be there as we start to Theory Craft our Rogue decks. We get over into Shaman. The Evolve stuff is still here, probably not good enough. Evolve seems to be dead. But Totem Shaman support is still in the game as well. Totem Shaman was never really all that good, didn't see play, but again, power level in Hearthstone is coming down because of those 3 sets rotating, so potentially Totem Shaman we might want to take a look at. All those cards are still going to be around as well, as you can see here. As we get into Warlock, a lot of the Imp support is still going to be around for Warlock, but some of the Imp support did rotate. Not necessarily sure that we're going to be able to put together a nice Imp Warlock deck, and honestly not quite sure that we really want to because we played Imp Warlock for so long, just because Warlock kind of got the short end of the stick when it came to new cards. But again, it could be an option as we start to Theory Craft decks for Festival of Legends. And we're going to see here that the Enraged Warrior package is actually still going to be staying. Enraged Warrior is going to have access to a lot of its same tools. We still have the weapon, we have the tutor for the weapon and or the buff. So Enraged Warrior may actually finally be good enough to be a deck, and Warrior may actually be a playable class in Festival of Legends just by way of all of the more powerful decks actually rotating to Wild. Decimator Olgra, man, fantastic art on this card. Really, really strong. Would love for it to see play. And I'd actually like to see Remornia see play. Again, great art on this card. A great card, fun to play with. So hopefully Warrior will be able to put something together with those. And then we get down here into the neutrals. Typically, neutrals don't really allow us to do new things, but I think one thing of note here, Prince Renathal is still going to be in Standard, and again, because the power level in Hearthstone is going down, Prince Renathal may once again be a popular card just because that 5 health is going to make a much bigger difference in a lower power level meta than it would in a meta of the current power that we're currently seeing now. And then as we get into March of the Lich King, one note here, I've talked about this a little bit as well as in the comments, that I've had conversations with other people. Death Knight is not losing a single card. It's a fear, I think, of a lot of people that Death Knight as a class may actually be overpowered. So all of the decks that we're familiar with, everything from Rainbow DK to Frost Death Knight, Unholy Death Knight, Blood, all of those decks are pretty much going to be intact. I think the only thing I can think of that's actually going to be rotating that, say, like a Blood Death Knight plays is going to be something like the Far Watch Post, the 2-mana 2/3 to increase the mana cost of cards that your opponent draws. So should be pretty easily replaceable. So Death Knight definitely should be a force to be reckoned with. Not a whole lot of changes in those decks. And we'll have to actually see if they get enough cards to really do anything new. Keeping in mind here as well that all of the Outcast package stuff was still really new. So Demon Hunter, again, maybe the Outcast package might be able to come back around. And as mentioned earlier, all of the Spell Demon Hunter support is still going to be in the deck outside of Sigil of Alacrity and Fell Barrage. So again, we can start to look in that direction to get some early ideas for Demon Hunter theory crafting. Getting over into Druid, Undead Druid might actually be the favored board-based Druid aggro deck as we go forward. Undead Druid received a lot of support from this particular set. And then you can see here also they have the card draw that could potentially be coming from this, as I do believe Composting is actually going to be rotating. And so, you know, again, this is a nature spell, so it would enable the Herald of Nature. So potentially there could be a aggro Undead Druid that's going to be taking the place of the current version of aggro Druid. Also, we want to keep in mind here, Arcane Hunter. Arcane Hunter is still going to have all of its support. Those cards are all really new. And so again, it wasn't powerful enough. It was just a little bit too slow and a little bit too weak to really see play and be a good deck. But again, with all those other decks rotating, Arcane Hunter is something we're going to have to think about and something that we're going to want to keep our mind on. Same thing with Arcane Mage. Again, it just didn't really have enough impact when it came out. Wasn't strong enough. We saw bits and pieces of the Arcane package used here and there. But Arcane Mage could actually be a pretty good burst deck or burn deck that we're going to take a look at as the new set launches. Again, we see a lot of pure Paladin support that's still going to be here. A little bit of Dragon support as well, although Dragon Paladin probably going to be gone with Kazakhstan rotating. Undead Priest as well, you know, Undead Priest is still keeping a lot of things, definitely with the Void Touched Attendant rotating, as well as Dark Bishop Benedictus. Feels like the deck is going to lose some reach, but again, with the power level going down, if the deck takes an additional turn or two to be able to find lethal on average, could actually just be good enough to be able to continue to be a deck in the new set. We're going to want to keep an eye on that, as well as possible replacements as the new cards are revealed. Concoction Rogue, likely going to be a thing just because the concoctions are just that strong and really good cards, but don't really know what that Rogue deck is going to look like necessarily. I feel like Miracle is going to be dead just based on the Mailbox Dancer rotating, but again, it's something that we're going to want to keep an eye on. Death Rattle Shaman is something that we could see potentially come into play. This was experimented with a little bit, all of these Death Rattle minions and Death Rattle support cards in an aggro Shaman. Again, just not strong enough to really take off, but again, a weaker meta. This could be Death Rattle Shaman time to shine. And then getting into Warlock here, none of this stuff really strikes me as being all that great. Other than potentially something like maybe a Thaddeus Warlock. Perhaps that deck, again, it was just a little bit slow and, you know, potentially was losing games before it really came online, but in a less powerful meta, potentially that Thaddeus Warlock that's playing like the Amorphous Slime, the Darkhan Drathir, as well as the Baron Rivendare could potentially be a thing. And here we see cards, again, for Enraged Warrior, some things that should still be able to allow the class to hopefully be able to compete now in a lower powered meta. And then as we get to the neutrals, you know, Astalor is still going to be in the game. That's still going to be a good win condition for a lot of different decks. As we move through, a lot of the undead minions that were introduced in this set still available. Hawkstrider Rancher, probably going to be around in some form in these board-based aggro decks. I feel like the power level of this card goes up just based on the things that are going to be rotating. Could be a candidate to go into that undead druid deck that I talked about, could be a thing. And I really just want to keep in mind that all of these cards are going to be available as we start to theorycraft for Festival of Legends. It's really, really exciting. And just thinking about the new cards, you know, being able to keep in mind the old cards that we still have access to is where we're going to be able to really be creative and try to maximize the decks that we're going to be starting with as we get the theory crafting for day one of the new meta. And then Thaddeus himself still sticking around. Again, the first thing that comes to mind for me is Thaddeus Warlock, but there could be other classes that could find a way to be able to use this. Let's just make sure that we don't forget about these older sets, because some of these older sets with cards that don't see play anymore, it's almost like getting more additional new cards for a brand new meta. I'm Uncorrupt. Thank you for watching, and good luck out on the ladder.